Well, I want to take a moment just to thank you for pausing, taking time to get to know some of our volunteers. And what we're doing today is we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Employer Support to the Guard and Reserve, which is a Department of Defense program designed to enhance the relationship between employers and the Guard and Reserve members within the committees that are established in every state. And every committee has a volunteer base that helps the Guard and Reserve within their state. Now, here in California, we have about 57,000 Guard and Reserve members, and we have about 170 volunteers that are dedicated to support those. Today, I'm delighted to introduce you to Donald Dorfman. Don is an individual that has spent many years working with employers so that they can better understand the law. He is also a full-time lawyer that works within the framework of a civilian while giving a lot of time as a volunteer to the Employer Support and Guard and Reserve. And we're delighted to have him here today. And without further ado, Don, would you give a little bit of background of why you came into the Employer Support and Guard and Reserve program?
When I retired from the Reserve as a staff judge advocate at 4th Air Force, I became active in ROA, and two of my former commanding generals were also active in ROA. And they both approached me and they said, you know, with your background as a judge advocate, a practicing attorney, it'd be a natural for you to become an ombudsman to go to bat for the servicemen that have problems with their employment. And I said, that's fine. I went through some training. Actually, I worked, trained under the Captain Wright, who was the guy that wrote the ESGR law. And like my two generals said, it was a natural for me. I became familiar with ESGR. I got a kick out of doing it. Gives me a chance to be a patriot, cash in on what I know how to do, and to help people.
Well, that's a great explanation. And for those that may not know what USER is, that's the Uniform Service Employment Reemployment Rights Act. It can be a very complicated law that protects Guard and Reserve in terms of them being taken away from the employer, performing services for their state for natural disasters, and also being called to serve internationally, protect our constitutional interests for national and our national defense interests. So it's a big thing. We can't perform Department of Defense mission without the Guard and Reserve because they constitute nearly 50% of our deployable strength. Now, that said, how long have you been doing this, Don?
I know it's more than 20 years. I can't tell you exactly for sure, but I know it's before 9/11 because I remember the problems we start having with 9/11, with the people being called up from the reserves, the employers being baffled. Some were patriotic, some were not patriotic, and they gave me a chance to deal with both of them as an ombudsman to try to explain the necessity for keeping our military strong.
Now, what Don has done is allude to a job that he does so well, and that is an ombudsman, which is a neutral mediator that works with employers and the reservists to resolve any conflicts or issues that may present themselves. And he's extremely good at it. I guess that comes from being an attorney with a lot of experience, but the reality is this is a very important function because it allows people to avoid conflicts when an individual or employee is called to duty, and it takes all the stress and anxiety out of working through the law. So we're deeply appreciative for his commitment and support to that. I have to ask you though, Don, why you stay with it? Why you remain committed to doing this job?
Well, first of all, I think to be a good lawyer, you're going to want to help people. And in my practice, I feel the same way. And this is another adjunct to that. I'm helping servicemen who are having problems with their employers that don't perhaps understand the importance of their military service. And it gives me a chance to intercede or mediate and make things work well for them so there's no problem on their job, and so the employer knows what a good job he's doing for America.
Tell me, Don, do you have to be a lawyer to explain USERA to people?
I don't. I know we have some good ombudsmen that aren't, but I think being a lawyer is two legs up on the job. You're used to dealing with people, you're dealing in conflicts sometimes, and you have to know the law and have to apply it. I think that's natural for me, and I think it's a natural for most attorneys, but others can be trained if they're, especially if they're people. If they like dealing with people and they're comfortable in controversies. I think they're quite capable of becoming an ombudsman.
Well, being a volunteer leader myself, I have gone to Don for his expertise on this on many occasions. And the reality is that we have a very cooperative family of volunteers within the Employer Support the Guard Reserve. And Don plays a very important role in working with us to make sure that our messaging is correct. Don, could you give us a couple of highlights of your career as a volunteer with the ESGR? What was one of the more exciting, or if you will, more satisfying?
Well, one of the things that I did was probably as conditions changed. Let's say it this way: when the plane struck at 9/11, employers understood how important it was for our reservists. But then there were some that didn't like it at all. They said, I don't like to have to hold a job for somebody coming back again. And in the early days, the role of the ombudsman was different than it is today. We were more of an advocate for the serviceman. And in those days, I knew how to write a letter to the employers that sort of explained in a nice way that this is a good thing for them to do and a bad thing for them not to do. The letter was so good that it was picked up as a prototype. It was used all over America until the ombudsmen changed their role into more not an advocate, but an intermediary and a mediator. And I have seen things where I had an FBI man that was when he would go for his reserve duty, the chief agent was giving him a hard time. And I explained to him, I said, something, giving him a hard time when he called up for military duty is a violation of the law. That's an unusual thing for an FBI agent to be doing. And he immediately understood. And my agent, well, the funny thing was the agent was a lieutenant colonel in the Marines. And I know enough that you don't make a lieutenant colonel Marines if you were a loafer or a sluggard or what have you. And that was what he was saying. It was a boondoggle. He said he was a boondoggle. He was just going away to get away from work. I said, no, I can assure you that he was a lieutenant colonel Marines. He was there for a good purpose. And that was an interesting thing. Okay.
Well, Don, thank you so much for pausing and giving us insights into your journey as a volunteer. And what do you think is the single biggest thing that motivates you to continue your service?
The idea, it's like the same way why I'm practicing law at this advanced age. It's a job that I can do, that I think I can do well, that does good for what I do, okay? If I'm helping the serviceman, if I'm helping America in a little way of keeping peace between the employer and the serviceman, I think I'm doing a good job, and I want to continue to do it as long as I can.
Well, thank you again, Don. That was very insightful, and actually your work and your dedication as a volunteer has been inspirational to many, and we look forward to many more years of working together. For those of you that have joined us, we want to thank you for taking the time to get to know our volunteers a little bit. We hope that you'll take any opportunity you can to know more about Employer Support the Guard Reserve as we celebrate our 50 years of service from 1972 to present. So thank you again, Don. Good talking to you.
Good talking to you, General.